welcome back to the Knit Yorker podcast. I'm Magali, and today we're here to talk more about knitting, as always. Before I get started, I do want to talk about what I'm wearing and what I've been up to. Today I'm wearing the Owlery blouse, which is a pattern by Fabel Knitwear, and I think this yarn is primrose yarn, which was kind of left over from a sweater that I was gonna make and then didn't work out, and so I had all this yarn I didn't know what to do with. I ended up with this blouse. It's quite like a simple square blouse. It has really fun sleeves. I think I made this maybe 2 years ago. Can't quite remember. It's a nice transition knit because it's not super warm. So it's nice for the spring day like today that we had a little bit warmer, but not quite, enough for like a summer outfit. So that's what I'm wearing today. And what I've been working on, I've actually, it's funny enough, just finished another Fabel knitwear pattern, the Owlery blouse. Can't quite see it as well just like this, but I did make a whole video about how I made this blouse, and it is probably one of my favorite knits of the year. It is something that's been in my queue for a really long time. I feel like this year has been the year of making all the things that I really want to make for some reason, and this is like one of them. So if you want to know more about all the details about this blouse that I just finished, definitely go check out that video that I posted last week. I finished this pretty recently, and that's been taking me down to only one work in progress project, funny enough. And I haven't started another one for reasons that I will go into, but in the meantime, I do want to show you what that is. If you saw one of my shorts that I posted earlier, I think last month, I started making this vest, and I am actually repurposing yarn from another project for something else that I made, which was a cardigan. That it's a cute cardigan. I just don't think it quite worked with the colors that I had, and it was a little too small because I lost one of the skeins randomly, and then I didn't have enough for the sweater, and then I found the skein, and then I didn't feel like making the whole sweater again. So anyway, I decided to completely unravel that and make something new instead, which I think I might go into more detail on that project specifically when I finish, because it's been an interesting journey. So this vest is called the Solstice Spencer by Mandy Julie, and yeah, it is knit separately front and back, and this is the front. So I don't have a lot quite yet. I hope I can finish it before the summer starts, because otherwise I'm not going to be able to wear it until next fall, and I would like to wear it sooner than that. So anyway, that's what I've been working on. I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of uncharacteristic of me to not have several knits going on at the same time, and kind of weird to only have one and been working on it kind of slowly. And the reason for that is, well, I have had other non-knitting related projects that I've been working on, which I will post on due course. But another reason, and one that actually kind of fits into today's theme, is because I'm going to be traveling very soon. I'm going to be going to London on just like a vacation trip. My first time in England, my first time in the UK, and in London, like the whole thing. And we're really excited about it, my husband and I. And of course, I've been planning around that. I didn't want to finish the Owlery blouse before that so I could wear it. I kind of want to finish this vest too before then. Don't know. I only have a few weeks before the trip, so I don't know that I will. And I also was thinking about what am I going to knit while I'm traveling, because I'm going to be gone for like about a week and a half-ish. Like 10 days. So obviously I need my knitting with me. And I actually just came back from another short trip. When I did that, I brought some knitting with me, and then I knit a little bit on the plane, and then I not at all during the whole trip. I don't know. I guess that's a good sign. But I like to be prepared for what if there's downtime, what if I'm sitting on a train or a bus or a plane and I have nothing else to do and I'd rather, be knitting. So I do plan my knitting a little bit around the trip. And what do I plan to bring with me? I've been thinking about small projects, something that doesn't bulk too much, because I did bring my both of the projects that I just showed you on my other recent trip in March. The blouse was almost done, which meant I had the whole thing with me, and it was kind of annoying to be just bringing that along so big, and that I didn't actually finish it on the trip, so I didn't get to wear it or anything. And then the other one, again, just taking up a lot of space. So I don't want to bring with me like a full-on sweater. I think I might start knitting a hat and or some mittens or something small where I don't need to bring like more than one skein of yarn for the project. Thinking 2 projects, and that feels like a lot. I always have this issue with knitting on the go where I don't quite know and I either overpack or underpack. So that is the theme of today, knitting on the go. And what does that mean? It means basically knitting when you're not at home. And one of the nice things about knitting, I think, in general as an art or as like something that you can do is that it's so portable, right? I think knitting and crochet both are so portable in ways that other crafts are not. Like I never bring my cross stitch with me anywhere. Maybe some people do, and I respect that. But it feels like it would be a lot more hassle and things might lose things. It's the same case for sewing. Like I don't know. I feel like it's harder to just walk around with stuff for sewing. Again, maybe people do. I haven't figured out how, and I just don't feel comfortable with all the pieces and traveling with it. Whereas knitting and crochet are so portable, and of course it depends on the project. You're not going to bring a whole blanket, or unless you bring squares. There's ways to do it, and I wanted to just talk about that and my plans for knitting on the go. In this case specifically, I'm planning for a trip, so I know that I do need to have something with me for a longer time, but I also mean things like just having a project with you at all times when you're outside your house, just in case you end up in a waiting area, or any other case in which you're just sitting around and not have much else to do, might as well be knitting. Or even going to a party and bringing out your knitting. Is that a thing that people do? I don't know. I have only done it a couple times, and every time I get people start asking me about it, which is totally fine if that's what you were looking for, but sometimes that's not what I want. So it feels a little, I've talked about this before too, about multitasking in knitting, if you haven't seen that episode. And if I find it really hard to hold a conversation and knit at the same time, even stuck in it, I feel like I can do it and everything, but for some reason it's not my favorite thing to multitask with. Like I would rather be knitting and watching something or listening to something, but engaging in a conversation does make it a little harder for me to either pay all the attention to the conversation or all attention to the knitting. So I don't tend to do that myself, but I know a lot of people do and feel very comfortable with it. So maybe that's something that could fall into knitting on the go. Of course, knitting in transportation. So that can be from a plane to a train to a bus to the subway, or any other mode of transportation. I think, again, the portability of knitting makes it so much better when you have to transport stuff, or you just have to be somewhere else and you're not driving and you can just bring out your knitting. I personally cannot knit in cars. I get really car sick very easily I can't even look at my phone and not get car sick. So that is something I've completely ruled out if I'm going to be in a car. But trains and planes, I think are fine for me personally. I used to always bring my knitting with me on the subway, and I stopped doing that mostly because my current commute is short, which is a good thing, but it's also a bad thing when you want to sit down and knit. Most of the times I don't even get to sit, and even if I do get to sit, it's usually really full and not comfortable enough to like get out my stuff. I used to do it when I had a longer commute. I used to do it all the time, and also when I used to commute every day, which I don't do anymore. So it just kind of feels like having that project that's always in your bag does not quite work for me. I used to also kind of select projects that will be on the go with me, usually socks or mittens or something small like that, because it's not bulky, it's more portable. I haven't been knitting any of those things lately, so I haven't had like a reason to. So I started to bring books with me instead, and ebooks, for the few moments I have. And even that, I don't get to read very much, honestly. Again, because I don't get to sit, or because even if I do sit 2 stops later I have to go. So I've kind of resorted more to the audio part of the commute because I do have to walk. So there you go. I do want to touch a little of your comments on knitting on the go and why you think about it. So let's look at some, shall we? As always, I put out these questions on my Instagram, on my YouTube, just to everyone in general who wants to contribute, and I read them anonymously, and then it kind of feels less one-sided, just my opinion, but more into what you guys think about the topic of the week. And this is what I got as a response for knitting on the go. This first one says, I can sometimes knit or cross stitch in a car, small project and not too complicated. Again, all my respect to anyone can do anything, even read or look at your phone in a car. I personally cannot get car sick. And I feel like that is just like a personal thing. I know people who can read in the car, almost in the dark, like, and not get car sick at all. And that is just, I think, like a personal, to each their own. Cross stitching in a car is interesting, even more interesting. I feel like those require me even more concentration. So wow, that is. But the small project, not too complicated, I think is the key. And also something that I've been trying to select when I have brought something with me. Here's another one. A friend from knitting group was saying that she takes projects she's just started so that she doesn't have to carry something bulky. And that's a great idea. I think if you want to bring like a sweater or something with you that would not be as portable, but if you're bringing a project that is just in the beginning, then you're not going to have as much bulk. I'm even thinking it would be a good idea to maybe do swatches, because those are always going to be small and you can maybe even finish it on the trip. I mean, like a smaller trip, like maybe a car trip, if you can do that, or subway or some other short ride. I think that could be fun. Or just the beginning of a video of a project. I have brought sleeves for sweaters with me in the past whenever the sleeve is knit separately, and that almost feels like its own project, even though it's part of a bigger one, and makes it a little more compact, I guess. So it's another way of not knitting like socks or small projects, but still having the opportunity of bringing them with you. So that's smart. Here's another one. Yes, I always have a project on me. Sweaters only if they're not too far in or complicated. Socks are my go-to. I feel like socks is the perfect project to bring in the go, just because well, it's kind of repetitive, or if you've knitted a lot of socks before, if they're not like too complicated of a sock, you know what you're doing. And I feel like sometimes I don't even need to measure like how long I want it, because I kind of already know more or less what it's supposed to look like. So it's such an easy thing to bring with you. And funny enough, I actually really like to travel with double pointed needles, and I like to knit my socks with double pointed needles. You would think it's not the best idea because you have more needles and it's kind of like, more stuff you can lose. But oddly enough, I find it easier that way sometimes, just because I knit faster with double pointed needles, and they take up a lot more space. So if you need to be compact, it's easy. Although I would not recommend it if you're not like super used to the double pointed needles, because then you might have some disasters there. But double pointed needles and obviously circle needles become super, super useful when you are knitting on the go, I think. I would not ever bring I don't even use those kind of needles, like the long, straight needles. But if I had a project for some reason that was using larger or longer needles, I would not bring it with me. Like, there's no way. I can't even imagine like being on the subway or in a, flight, small space with my giant needles. Just feels like so counterintuitive. And for flights, I do find it that it's more relaxing for me to knit than anything else. Like, even watching something, I like to have my knitting, and it just becomes this like circle thing where like I can knit waiting for the plane, and then I can knit on the plane and then that's pretty much it, I think. But there's like those two moments where like there's nothing else you can do other than wait, and it becomes like the perfect thing to distract yourself, relax yourself, feel like you're doing something, and keep your hands busy, I guess. Here's another one. I knit on the subway constantly. Usually easier if I'm sitting, but standing works too. I don't know how people knit standing up. I've seen it. I've even seen people walking and knitting, which blows my mind. I cannot do that. Even standing on the subway, I think just because it's too many things and you need to be holding on to something, and usually I'm carrying like a bag or something, so I feel like holding on and knitting, ooh, I don't know if I could do it. So my respects to those who have that good of balance. They can knit and stand up and ride the subway at the same time. But I will, like I said, or I have knit on the subway and used to do it more often when I have longer rides. One thing I do like, and I used to do that more, it was knitting in the park. And that's something that I'm kind of looking forward to doing once it gets warm again. And this is the time of year where it's a spring, it's starting to get a little warmer some days, still a little cold, the sun's coming out, the days are longer, so you're starting to itch for the summer. And I'm feeling that way right now, and I'm looking forward to knitting outdoors, so be it at a park, in a picnic, or something like that, just sitting down in a bench or on the grass or on a picnic and taking out my knitting and just enjoying the outdoors is something that I really like. But again, I gotta be careful not to lose anything. If I not have something simple, so that I don't somehow drop a needle or something, a stitch marker that just happened. You don't want to lose it in the wild. But it is, I think, probably my most favorite non-home place to knit is knitting in a park or somewhere in nature. The most like fun place I've ever knit was one time we were hiking up a mountain, and when we stopped for a bit and I took out my knitting and took in the view and the knitting. It's not like a weird place, but it's not somewhere I had thought about knitting before. Not a hiker, not something I do all the time. So it felt like a special moment to just take out my knitting. And I feel like really the outdoors is like somehow like a really fun place to take something that is, to me, so related to being cozy at home. So that was fun. I don't know, I would like to hear, I didn't put this question out, so I'm putting it out now. What is the most fun place that you've ever knit at, or the most interesting, unique place that you've ever taken your knitting to? Like I said, outdoors, parks, mountains. I've taken it to parties, to the doctors. Obviously on trips. So yeah, I'd love to hear what is your favorite non-home, outside of home place to knit. I think I have one more input, and this says, I used to have a keyring with a razor circle in and notches. You could stitch the yarn and cut it without scissors. So I think I've never heard of this tool, but it sounds really cool. It sounds like a ring with riches, so that you can travel with your project without actually having scissors with you. And I feel like this is something that is always very contentious, and I've seen it before online about whether or not you can travel with all of your notions, including scissors, or just your knitting in general. I personally have never had any issues bringing my knitting with me, and I know for sure certain that in the US at least, you can travel anywhere inside the country and not have any issues from TSA, because knitting needles and crochet hooks are part of the accepted items. In fact, one time, the only time that I've ever gotten asked what, or like looked at my stuff, was just one time. And that they opened my bag to look what it was, and they opened my knitting bag and they looked at my tools. Like I have a little case, and they actually opened it and they looked at it and they went, okay, this is fine. I guess it came out on their scanner. And I always travel with scissors that are about 1 inch long. They're really, really small. The ones that are kind of like, I don't know how to say it because I don't have them with me, but they're very small and they have a very tiny, razor to cut. So I've never had problems with them in the US or the few international places I've gone recently. And I have not had any issues with knitting needles, and I almost always use metal needles, and also no problem with it. With that said, I've heard of people having issues in other parts of the world, so it's not something universal, but I feel like it is pretty common, and as long as you look it up ahead of time, you should be fine. I did look it up before going to the UK, and they are totally fine with that too, which would be very weird if they weren't, but you never know. Some countries are more strict than others. I think you would think that a metal stick would cause a little bit of alert, but it doesn't really, because it's clearly for knitting. Scissors might get, not as much. But again, if you look at the rules and they are under that size, definitely don't bring like your sewing needles, but small little ones should be fine. But that idea, if you're like really nervous of getting your nice scissors taken away or something like that, you can always do what this person suggested, which was getting some sort of tool like that where it's like a ring with little riches so you can still cut your yarn. I've always thought in the worst case scenario, if people were to ask me to leave my needles there, which would be awful because I wouldn't be able to knit anymore, but at least because I have interchangeable circular needles, what I would do is say, okay, and unscrew the needle part and then leave the rest in the project so that at least I don't lose whatever I was doing. I hope that day never comes because I would be truly traumatic, I think. But at least I have a plan B for what if I lose my needles. Wherever I'm going, it's possible that I can find a replacement to the interchangeable needles. I usually bring the projects in my carry-on bag and I don't check it unless I one time I did have 3 projects and one of them was checked. I don't remember why, but I think I did that. But most of the times I only travel with 2 projects max, depending on the length of time, but mostly 2, just so that if I get bored of one, I can switch to the other. And I bring them with me in my carry-on, and I bring some simple notions. Never had an issue with any of that stuff. I guess we'll see how it goes this time, but I don't anticipate anything to go wrong. So anyway, going back a little bit, what projects I'm bringing on my trip. I have a couple of little ones that I've been thinking about. There's this hat and mittens combo from Purl Soho. They're called Picot hat and hand warmers. So they're not quite mittens, they're hand warmers. But I think it's really cute, and I actually have some Purl Soho yarn left over from a project from a while back. It's like a whole skein. So I think if I start with the hat, I should have enough for also the mittens, and if I don't, the nice thing about that is that I can bring that one skein, and probably, I think they're all the same gauge, even though it's hat and hand warmers, so I can totally kind of have 2 projects going on, well, one right now, if I were to run out of the hat project. So there's that, and that's kind of my plan. And then for my second project, because like I said, I like to have another one at the same time, I am not actually sure yet of what it is that I'm bringing. I was thinking of this cardigan, which is called a Cal cardigan by Claire Jackson from Perfectly Knotted. And it's just like a, grandpa cardigan with like the front large buttons, and it's like an oversized type of cardigan. I've wanted to make something like that for a while, just something cozy to wear at home. But it is a big project, so definitely I would only bring it if I just started it. I have to figure out the gauge before I go so that I know which needles to bring with me. And maybe this is something I could bring with me. I'm worried that I would get too into it and end up with something kind of big that I'm carrying around. More likely, I will only even work on one of these projects, but here I am getting so worked up about which one to bring. And if not, maybe I will bring socks. I just don't know which socks. So I do have some sock yarn lying around, so that's a possibility. But you know what? Maybe I only bring one project. That's a little bit crazy and scary to only bring one project. I feel like it's a recipe for definitely having lots of knitting time and then not having enough to knit. So the good thing is that where I'm going, there's gonna be yarn stores and there's gonna be lots of yarn. So I definitely, if I only bring one project, I will have options. So I'm not too worried either. And I will definitely make a video about yarn stores and anything yarn related that or knitting related that I find while I'm there. But otherwise, that's kind of all I have for today. I just wanted to think a little bit about the knitting on the go and how it works for everyone and for myself as I get prepared for this trip, because it is something that I've been thinking about a lot. I'd love to hear about your knitting on the go suggestions, projects that you like to bring with you, places that you like to knit, places that you don't like to knit. I'd love to hear about all of that stuff. And if you have any project sock suggestions, I'll take any sock suggestions for my trip. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share these videos. It helps so much whenever you guys watch my videos and like them. And I love to hear about you. Definitely keep an eye out for the next question that I will put out at some point. And for my other videos on projects that I've finished, on sewing projects, vintage projects, keep an eye out. I'm being really diligent about posting every week. I might not post while I'm on that trip, but I definitely keep an eye out for all that stuff. More is coming up this summer. And yeah, other than that, hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you for watching.